It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Sarah Dalton. Her bio just reads like, I fangirl her bio so much. She's a Fulbright scholar. She's the previous president of the Paediatric and Child Health Division of the RACP. So I'm really looking forward to hearing this talk on surviving consultancy.
I will never forget the first big resuscitation I was involved in as a new consultant. I will never forget the day where I felt like for the first time I was taking my first step onto the pitch in the big league. A 3-year-old girl was coming by ambulance in cardiac arrest after having a plastic base of a lollipop, somehow, as only 3-year-olds can do, lodged in the back of her mouth. And she'd had an airway obstruction that the ambos had managed to move enough to get enough oxygen in that her heart rate had returned. But she was going to be here in 5 minutes and we had to get ready. Luckily, I was in a tertiary children's hospital, and within 5 minutes I had an ENT registrar, an anaesthetic registrar and a very senior ED registrar to help me. And then what happened was probably one of the hardest things that I had to make a decision on. The ENT registrar said, "Oh my God, that's terrible, we're going to have to pull that out. I brought my forceps, let me pull it." The anaesthetic registrar went, "Oh my God, don't make the airway bleed. Let's just paralyse the patient and then we can open the mouth and then we can pull it out." And the ED registrar went, "Whoa, this patient has a pulse, stop, let's just do a surgical airway." And I went, they're looking at me. There's no one behind me. Now, I'm very pleased to say there was a very good outcome for this patient. She was stable enough that we all took a breath and realised we could get her to theatre, where there was a controlled environment where they were able to remove the plastic foreign body. And to the best of my knowledge, she lived happily ever after. But for me, that was one of my most resounding memories of my first years of being a consultant. So when I was asked to talk about the first 1,000 days of being a consultant, that was the first thing I thought about. The second thing I thought was, that was quite a long time ago. I'm going to have to talk to some real consultants in their first 1,000 days to try to see whether it's still the same. I'm guessing that many of you in the room are in your first 1,000 days of being a consultant, or certainly 1,000 days before or after that, most likely. And when I spoke to my colleagues, what I heard back was not dissimilar to how I felt all those years ago. The resounding message was, I'm not good enough to be here. It's not going to take long for everybody to find out. The second thing they said was, I am never going to get a job. I'm just going to have to say yes to everything because I just don't know when that big job's going to come along. And the third thing they said was, actually, don't tell anyone, but I'm not really sure what I want to do anyway. That's exactly how I felt, standing there at the end of the bed in this resus when everybody looked at me, and I just thought, this is the moment when everybody discovers that I don't know what I'm doing, that I don't deserve to be here, that I'm never going to get that big job that I want, and probably never going to have a career in paediatric emergency medicine. So in coming to you today, I don't intend only to share our self-doubt and our concerns, because we have them and we must share them, but we also do and should find ways to work through that. What was slightly more challenging was to work out how to be able to provide some advice and guidance to you in how you navigate that time when you stand up on the pitch for the first time. So in thinking about what global expertise I could tap into to help you with this challenge, I couldn't go much further than Ted Lasso. It's really good to know some of you are laughing because that means that some of you have watched Ted Lasso. For those of you who haven't, I don't intend to tell the story, but it's worth a watch. And effectively, Ted is a coach from America who coaches American football, who's brought to the UK to coach soccer. And everybody thinks and predicts he will fail terribly because he knows nothing about soccer. But what he actually does is enable the team to thrive and perform and do extremely well, not because he understands the rules of the game, but because he understands people. And he understands performance, and he understands how to get the best out of people. So in sharing with you today some lessons about how to survive and thrive in consultancy, I'm going to tap into just 5 lessons from Ted Lasso that are as easy as ABC. The first one is appreciate. Appreciate yourself and appreciate others who have been with you on this journey. I'd just like you to stop for a moment and appreciate how you got to this room. And I don't mean you got a bus or you walked up the stairs or you flew in from overseas last night. I mean all those years of schooling, of training, of potentially doing exams, to come to the point where you're in a room, thanks to the organisers, full of national and international experts in paediatrics. Think how far you've come. We don't often recognise how lucky we are and how hard we have worked to get to where we are right now. And I think that's a failing because we only ever just think about how far we want to go. We never stop to think about how far we have come. The other really important lesson, I think, is to appreciate those around you. So in those thousands of steps you took to be here in the room, remember for a moment all the people who were there taking the steps with you, picking you up when you fell, helping you believe that you were going to be able to go on. I told you I'd share some lessons from my very wise younger colleagues, and one of them, when I asked them about how they were navigating their first 1,000 days of consultancy, said, well, I started out being really stressed because I didn't really know what I wanted to do and there weren't any jobs and I didn't know where I would get one. And then she said, I realised that I actually had an opportunity. And I stood back and I thought to myself, amazing, I've now finished my training. And I have an opportunity to reset and reflect and work out what I really want to do. And now that I realise it, I haven't really been looking after myself. I definitely haven't spent enough time with my family. So I'm going to consciously choose to just work part-time for at least a year. My intention is not to take another job. I'm going to get fit, look after myself, and take my kids to the zoo on weekdays. I thought that was pretty wise. This is someone probably in their first 100 days of being a consultant. Remember to appreciate yourself and others. Lesson number 2. Believe. This won't be a hard one for you to understand because we always say, it'll be fine, just believe in yourself. Believe everything will be okay. It will be okay. And it's true. It's very important to believe in yourself. Not only to appreciate how far you have come, but to believe in the potential for how far you can go. But as you can see from this picture, and for those who know the story, this is a sign that was really iconic for Ted and his team. But you can also see it's been ripped up, torn down, and put back up again. So it's not only a matter of believing in how far you can go, but believe that if you fall, you will get back up. You will learn, and you will be stronger. As a room full of paediatric clinicians, we should take some inspiration from our toddler patients who fall all the time, who get back up and keep going. No tears. It's developmental. Believe that you can actually learn and move forward and believe in the potential of the future. And I know that some of you might think this is mumbo jumbo, happyology, believe, and maybe to some extent it is, but there's actually some quite interesting research that shows that people who are mindful, who practice intentional, thoughtful intention setting, when examined, their prefrontal cortex has increased activity and increased grey matter. So we don't know exactly yet why it works, but it does work. So the message for you, if you can remember, is to believe in what is possible. Lesson number 3, I can't talk about TED without saying coach and be coached. Coaching means different things to different people, and as a qualified professional coach, for me what it means is the ability to work with someone to help them to understand their challenges, but more importantly, to set their own goals and come up with their own way of solving their problems. It's not for me to give them advice, it's to support them to work out what they want to do and then work on the action and accountability to make it happen. It's really about solution-focused thinking. It's about being able to see your way out of the problem. Not, I'm a victim, this has happened to me, there's nothing I can do, but you know what, this system is really hard and I'm in a difficult position, but these are the things I can do, even if it's a small step. And a coach will work with you to help you take that small step. One of the most exciting things I've done as a coach is very early on in my coaching journey, I was part of a panel that worked with Black Dog Institute to research the impact of professional coaching on the well-being of senior doctors. So we coached 35 senior doctors in a large tertiary hospital in Sydney, and at the end of that time found a statistically significant improvement in well-being, flourishing, and solution-focused thinking. And to me, I think it's really just creating a safe space where someone can be very honest and share with you what their problems are, but more than that, become unstuck and find some steps to have a sense of agency and to move forward. So as a consultant, you are a team leader and a team player. I really believe as a team leader, it's a key competency we should all have to be able to lead coaching conversations. But as a team player, we all deserve to have that opportunity to be coached, to be our best, to find our own solutions. So of course I think everyone should have a coach. But if you don't know where to find one, well, first of all, happy to talk. But secondly, you all have your own inner coach. Now I'm guessing most of you know your inner critic, the one that sits on your shoulder and yells at you all the time. The one that said, today's the day they're going to discover that you don't know what you're doing. Today's the day that everything's going to go pear-shaped. I told you you were never going to get a job. But if you imagine that inner critic on one shoulder, imagine an inner coach on the other shoulder. I really think we can all dial up that inner coach and learn to dial down the inner critic. So imagine if instead of hearing, you're not good enough, you're going to fail, we all knew that would happen, imagine hearing the best predictor of future performance is past performance, and you've done this before, you'll be fine. Imagine hearing, you've trained for this. Yeah, it's a bit stressful, but you've been through stress before, and look at the team you've got around you. We all have an inner coach, we just need to remember to listen. Lesson number 3, forgive me for those of you who haven't seen Ted Lasso, because this will make no sense to you. For those who are laughing, I can see that you do understand. Diamond Dogs is really about teams and surrounding yourself with people. So the first thing is choose your team. Going back to my wise younger colleagues in their first 1,000 days of consultancy, one of them said to me that his most significant learning was he didn't spend enough time working out what team he wanted to be on. He spent a lot of time trying to get a job and saying yes to everything in case nothing come along. He was very, very busy, but that was a sign of success, until he realised that he was too busy, that he was doing things that he didn't actually love, and worse, doing things with people who he didn't necessarily want to spend more time with. And so his reflection to me in sharing advice for you was, make sure you spend some time thinking about the team that you're going to join, because this is one of the most important things that will lead to your sense of surviving and thriving in your role. The other thing is the actual diamond dogs from TED, and those of you who know it, I'm sure will smile. But basically, it's an inner circle of a few trusted confidants where you can call them to you and you can be absolutely honest and open and vulnerable. And they will support you with empathy and with solutions and probably with humour. Another of my new colleagues, when I asked her what her best advice was or the most helpful thing she'd done as a new consultant, she said that she'd found other people who were in their first 1,000 days and she'd set up a little mentor group. And they called each other with what they thought might be stupid questions or questions that would be too embarrassing to ask anybody else. And they helped each other. And for her, that was one of the most important enablers of how to really do well in her first 1,000 days. The last thing I'd like to share with you as the final lesson is one that I don't think will come as any surprise. And for those of you who know Roy Kent, I think this is an even more amusing slide. But again, if you haven't, look at #MedLasso. There's a lot to learn. Don't ever forget the bubbles. Think for a moment about why you chose to work in paediatrics. I don't know about you, but for me, it was pretty much because you got to have fun when you go to work every day. True story, all I really wanted to do when I grew up was go to NIDA. Wanted to perform, have fun. I was one of those weird kids at school where my favourite subjects that I did best at were physics and drama. Here I am. But I loved going in where part of my job every day was to make a kid smile, to blow bubbles, to play wiggles, to bring the clown doctors in. Who wouldn't want to work in that environment? But then what seems to happen over time is that you run out of time to do that, or someone else is doing that, and you're the consultant and you've just got to go and make the diagnosis. And we can't have bubbles anyway because they're a slip risk and we don't want someone to fall over. And we stop having fun because it's too bloody serious and it's just scary. So can you just move on and see the next kid, please? But we're all there to have fun. Our patients love it, the parents love it, but we love it. It's actually also not a new concept. Aristotle talked about eudaimonia and hedonia. Eudaimonia is doing what is right, doing something with purpose. And he put this as a really priority way of a road to well-being, is to have eudaimonia. We work in paediatric acute care, so we shouldn't have any issue with purpose with what we do. But the other road to well-being is hedonia, like hedonism, like having a bit of fun. And I think we all know the importance of doing both and never getting to the point where you forsake one for the other. So I encourage you to think when you go to work, or even today, at the end of every day, what is something that made you smile? There's always something that made you smile, even if it's the barista gave you the wrong coffee. But what is it that made you smile that day? And maybe even more importantly, every morning when you wake up, what can you do to make someone else smile? We need to have a bit of fun in our lives, and we don't need to make excuses for it. Find the joy, find the sparkle, do something that makes you smile every day. So what does this all mean for me? In all honesty, I think it's about time I took my own advice. The truth of the story is that last week I had my last shift in resus. I'm beginning a new part of my career, opening a new chapter, and moving into roles where I'm quite frankly probably going to be terrified. Standing in front of groups of people, talking to international experts, doing things that I never ever thought for a moment that I would do. And what is my brain saying to myself? You've got no idea what you're doing. You're not qualified to do this. It's not going to take long before people work out that you don't actually have a clue. Do you really think you're going to have a career in this space? I think it's time that you came up with a better option and work out what you could do instead. And instead, what should I do? Well, I'm going to stop, appreciate how far I've come, believe in how far I can go, dial up my inner coach, have my diamond dogs on speed dial, and remember to never, ever forget the bubbles. Thank you.